A Sunday of potential severe weather up and down the eastern seaboard as we have SPC outlining a large area of risk. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday morning Joe and Joe weather show, complete with me, fresh from a 866-mile drive, which was a lot of fun. And the Joe and Joe weather show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware. Long Island's largest mulch source. We've gone from rock salt to mulch. And of course, with spring here, make sure you get whatever it is you need to do to make your yard the best yard there is. And they're busy there at Omni, moving all the mulch around along with topsoil, gravel, and more. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, 631-756-1125. The website, omnitruevalue.com. And also, brought to you by Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist. Plan ahead for the next holiday season at 631-957-5106. They've got Christmas covered, they have Halloween covered, and several other holidays. So give them a call if you want to have your house decorated, or maybe you want to become a decorator and make some extra money. 631-957-5106. liholidaylighting.com. So, Mr. Rayo, it's quite an interesting day here, and on top of everything else, the wind machine is about to get turned on again for tonight and tomorrow.
Indeed, once again. And before we talk about the wind, Joe, the last 2 or 3 days, I was scratching my head. Now, nothing against the folks who are at the Storm Prediction Center, but I was just wondering, why did they always keep even the area of general thunderstorm coverage to the south of the tri-state area? So I said, the warm front's going to move through. We're going to be in that wedge between the warm front to our north and the cold front coming in this evening from our west. Why at least not mention a little bit of convective activity, maybe even some possible severe weather? And even yesterday, they had everything scrunched just to the south. And as you just pointed out today, now they have the entire, or virtually the entire eastern seaboard brushed with at least the risk not only of thunderstorms, but maybe a marginal risk of severe weather, even up here. And we may see that with the cold front, not right now, but probably the best shot would be later in the day today or toward this evening as the front sweeps on through.
Yeah, I drove back down to Georgia yesterday, and blue skies and sunshine until I got into Southern Virginia and drove into a black brick wall. It's a lot of fun driving in thunderstorms, Joe, when you're at an elevation of about 1,500 or 2,000 feet and watching lightning bolts shoot to the ground and hitting you on either side, along with the heavy rain. But, just kind of moved along. And now this morning here, I have to tell you, the thunderstorms have been, first of all, we had rain. When it rains here, it really rains. It's like somebody pouring buckets of water down. When you see the huge water flow. And I have everybody here has a metal roof, so of course you really hear it. It echoes. And we had thunder and lightning. Something got hit nearby here because the thunder was so incredibly loud that it shook the house, and the hit must have been very close because of the loudness of the thunderstorms. We seem to be in a bit of a lull period here at the moment, but we'll give the radar a check in a little bit to see if I'm in line for some more. I also want to, on my drive on Friday, I started Friday evening, so I drove from Long Island. I stopped in Westchester, stayed at my mother's house, so I basically knocked out the first hour. So here's something that I don't remember seeing, but now that I've experienced it. So they closed because I'm guessing because of the wind, unless there was something else going on, but they closed the bridges to truck traffic. First it said empty trucks that have, empty trucks were not allowed to cross the bridge, but apparently on the Whitestone Bridge, they were forcing all the trucks to get off the road, which created such a horrendous backup. It took me longer to go from Long Island to 62 miles from where I was on Long Island to Westchester County than it took me to drive across 5 states yesterday.
Wow.
The traffic was crazy. But the thing that wound up happening was, so I finally get through, this huge traffic jam. So I get on the bridge. Halfway up the bridge, the traffic comes to a dead stop. I sat on the top of the Whitestone Bridge for about, I would say, 5 minutes. And when you're sitting on top of the Whitestone Bridge, when the weather is okay, it's one thing. But when you've got 50 mile an hour winds blowing at you at basically a 90 degree angle of your truck, it's not the most. It isn't the most, let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? Comfortable feeling in the world to be up there.
That bridge was designed after Galloping Gertie, the Seattle-Tacoma bridge that collapsed.
Yes.
Back in like 1940. That the Whitestone Bridge basically is the twin of that bridge. And after what happened in 1940, they kind of went back and kind of stabilized or stiffened that bridge up. But the bridge is supposed to bounce. It's supposed to waver in strong winds, because if it were stiff, that would make it even more prone to going down or whatever. I'm sure it's not very pleasing being on that bridge with very, very strong winds blowing. And of course, you just mentioned you experienced something like that yesterday. A little frightening, perhaps, too, I guess.
I'm monitoring the chat board today because I'm back on 2 monitors. Joe, you can you should enjoy the fact that Manny Fregosa is new to the chat board, and he says these 2 clowns act like they know nothing of weather modification. Okay, so that's
oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, so now we're clowns. All right. You know what, Manny?
I'm the one with the big red nose.
Exactly.
I'm the one with the big red nose, Manny.
Exactly. Yeah. Hate to tell you what that makes you, posting that message on the chat board, but we tend to be kind to those that have lesser minds. But we'll. You know what? I'm gonna.
I'd like Manny.
I'm in the mood to have some. I'm in the mood to have some fun. I'm not going to take him off the chat board. Let him say what he wants. It's a Sunday. I need something to laugh at.
I'd like to subject Manny to an entire semester of listening to lectures by Professor Ehrlich or Professor Spar or Dr. Getzelman. And I'm sure that after 2 or 3 sessions, Manny would be flittering out the door. I mean, we had to go through that back in the day, but I think we know a little bit about weather modification, Mr. Fregosa. So,
all right, Christina Pedia is on. Christina Pedia has been in the hospital with COVID, and we wish her well and hope that she continues to improve. She's improved enough to put the comment to say, "Get the clown posse." Really, we really do wish you well. James H, an early super chat hit. Thank you, James. And Joe, he says this would be the 5th wind advisory this month. I think so. Yeah, this is number 5, and we do have advisories up. Although it's kind of strange what the Weather Service did. I don't know if you picked up on this, but let me bring it up on the screen. So give me 1 second. Just juggling a few things here at the same time, and we'll start things off. Then we're going to go talk about the severe weather and everything else that's going on. But take a look at the watches and warnings map. Now, this must be because there's got to be some sort of local effect going on in some places. But the Weather Service has they have wind advisories up from the northeastern counties of New Jersey and through much of New England, which I kind of expected, all right? They also have wind advisories up for all of Maryland, okay? and northwestern Virginia. Now the mountains up and down I-81, that whole corridor there. I get that. I sort of get that part. What I don't get is I guess maybe according to whatever they have using or whatever models they're using to figure these numbers out. In between, there's no advisories up. So there's no advisories up for much of the state of New Jersey except the northeastern counties, and no advisories up for, I would have thought, maybe eastern Pennsylvania. In a way, I'm not surprised at that. I'm just a little bit, I'm just trying to understand the entire state of Maryland. Again, it must be some kind of funneling effect maybe they're expecting to bring the wind gusts down that strong there. That's what I can think of.
Well, my general rule of thumb for wind is to take the boundary level wind and multiply it by 1.5 off of the FU 61 tabular data, and that it seems to me, looking at the very latest FUS that came out about a half an hour ago, the peak winds for LaGuardia for the tri-state area would be hitting during the afternoon today, with maybe gusts in the immediate vicinity of like 35 to 40. I mean, nothing overly strong, nothing that we can't handle. Of course, out on Long Island, the winds tend to be a bit stronger. The other day we had winds gusting to over 60 on parts of eastern Long Island. So, and interestingly, Joe, the lifted index, the indicator for possible thunderstorm activity, drops to -3, which is a moderate level for potential strong thunderstorm activity by 8 o'clock this evening. And then 6 hours later, it jumps to +13. So I would suspect that if we're going to see any convection, it probably will come, this is for our local area now, the tri-state area, it would come this afternoon into about 7 or 8 o'clock this evening. And then very quickly, when the winds shift over into the west and northwest, that convection threat is going to diminish to 0. And we may even have skies that will go into a clearing mode in the late night hours after midnight tonight. So all the action, I think, is going to be this afternoon and for a short while early this evening. The winds, well, I think the winds will be busy at least into early tomorrow, and then they'll quickly drop off some. But I don't know whether or not I would have personally put up a wind advisory. I think they're going to fall just short of the criteria for wind advisory levels, but still, I guess it's worthwhile to mention. And yeah, it has been a very windy month so far this month of March.
Yes. Storm Prediction Center. Enhanced risk up, as you said, extended northward this morning into southern New England and up the Hudson Valley, almost to about Albany. The slight risk was kind of nudged a little bit further to the north into northern Delaware and then just south of the PA-Maryland line. Enhanced risk in southeastern Virginia and in a small portion of northern North Carolina. And the slight risk, by the way, goes all the way down into northeast Alabama. And so I'm in the slight risk of severe weather with this. And the marginal risk goes a bit further south than that. When we look ahead over the next couple of days, the actual pattern across the United States is changing thanks to a developing block. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that is going to reduce the severe weather threat. So when we look at tomorrow, so this is Monday into Tuesday, no severe weather is forecast across the U.S. On Tuesday into Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Yes, Tuesday into Wednesday, a small area of marginal risk for northeastern Texas and into Louisiana, northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and also into northern Mississippi, just a marginal risk. And I don't think this is a situation that you're going to see a whole lot of upside here with regards to suddenly waking up and, on that particular day and finding, moderate risk or enhanced risk. Couldn't rule out a, maybe a little slight risk for a small area. And then looking at the day 4 to 8 time frame, we have predictability too low on day 4, potential too low on day 5. So day 5 looks like one of those quiet days. Potential too low on day 6, potential too low on day 7, and potential too low, Joe, on day 8. And that kind of makes sense. If we're going into a blocking pattern, it's going to stop storms from moving across the plains into the Great Lakes and probably shutting the Gulf of Mexico off for a little while, and that would reduce the potential for severe weather.
It would. And as you just alluded to, we may see some changes in the overall pattern as we move on toward the latter part of next week, which might be of interest to some. But yeah, it looks like things are going to finally quiet down, especially down across the Southland, where they've had 2 consecutive weeks of high potential for severe weather, which is something that you don't often see. But it'll be nice to see things quiet down over the southern end of the United States for a change.
By the way, on Tornado HQ, bringing this up, just as you said, the fact that things have quieted down a bit, and while we do have some strands of thunderstorms that are running down the I-81 corridor on into northern Georgia and southern Alabama and southern Mississippi, they're not quite to the level of what we saw back a few days ago and in the other severe weather outbreak before that. A couple of stronger storms down off Galveston in Texas. And then, of course, you see what's going on here in the Northeast with these waves of heavy rain. And there was actually, Joe, some lightning and thunder being reported around Kennedy Airport a little earlier. My friend Mike Leona, who was one of my former, I'm the former one, but one of my my regular producer over at Pix, had let me know about this morning because he's on shift at Kennedy right now, and those waves moving on up to the Northeast. But as far as warnings are concerned, severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings, we don't see any, and haven't seen any today. If you go back 2 and 3 days ago, the long list is still there, but there's nothing new from the standpoint of severe weather. Here's what it looks like on the satellite today. Is we've got low pressure up in the Great Lakes. You see some Gulf moisture coming up and moving up the eastern seaboard. And, of course, with the warm front pushing northward, the cold front to follow, you get whoever gets warm sectored could see some developing storms later on today as that swings to the east. The plains are quiet at the moment. The northwest seeing some moisture moving in there. But no major storms, Joe, on the horizon at this point. No, nothing, and doesn't look like we're going to see anything major, in my view, this coming week.
Well, no, the thing that I'm making the allusion to, not necessarily later this week, but we still had that weird setup around the 5th or 6th of April with that pivoting upper low that elongates and spins, actually storminess back toward the coastline. That's the weird setup that we might be looking at, not necessarily for this week, but again for sometime early the following week.
All right, radar right now, pretty busy there over in eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, up to Long Island, southern New York, into Connecticut as that warm front pushes through, and you see the trailing showers and storms running down from West Virginia down into northern Georgia and through northern Alabama. And yeah, I'm just gotten. It looks like I might be getting ready. Yep, those were the ones may have just gone through here. I may be just west of that heavy stuff that you see there in northern Georgia. And WPC over the next 7 days. Actually pretty bullish with the rainfall amounts here because we do have another system to deal with on Wednesday night and Thursday. Well, later Wednesday and Thursday, and especially for New England where they're showing 2 to 3 inch liquid amounts. And of course, that also includes what falls today. This goes from 8 a.m. today to 8 a.m. next Sunday. And you're seeing some heavier precip also. Most of this is probably today down in Georgia, northern Mississippi, and in eastern Tennessee. Hardly anything going on in the plains, hardly anything going on in the Southwest and in California with some rain up into the Pacific Northwest. And let's give a look-see at what WPC says with all of this for snow. And this takes us into Wednesday morning. So let's do the probability of 2. because this time of year it gets tough. But there you see it. Up in northern New York, a small area in the northern Adirondacks with the probability of 50% and 50% or higher in northernmost Maine. So Caribou getting its usual late season snowfalls. And on up in the Northern Rockies and in the Pacific Northwest, some higher probabilities of at least 2. I'm going to bring up, Joe, the long range. I want to take a look at this. Let's take a look at the long range on this, because there is a system for Wednesday night, Thursday, and it is a system that the usual internet chatterboxes are playing up. So I'm just kind of curious as to what WPC thinks about this. And let's see. All right, so for Thursday, WPC has in western Pennsylvania, north central PA, maybe making it into the western Poconos and western Catskills. That's from there north and west is where they have a probability of 10 to 30% of at least a quarter of an inch of the equivalent of snow and sleet. The darker green is 30 to 50%. So this is for Wednesday into Thursday. And then for Thursday into Friday, they have a 10 to 30% for northeast and north central PA, New York State, mainly north of the Catskills and north of Albany. In Vermont, in the land of Bill Rogers, we have 10 to 30% chance there, and on up into northern New Hampshire, and 30 to 50% further north. So I'm kind of looking at this, and I'm kind of looking at what's going on for Thursday, and I don't know. I just it didn't exactly knock my socks off in terms of potential for some big snows, let's say, in those areas well up into upstate New York and into New England, and northern New England in particular.
Of course, now we're talking about the month of April, and at least here in the immediate tri-state area, I think the normal snowfall at Central Park is less than an inch. So, again, you're going to have to really go a long ways if we're still working on that 1.4 to get to 40 inches at Central Park. And on the chat board, Barry is asking me to bring back 4/6/82, April 6, 1982. Barry Goldberg, of course, referring to the blizzard that hit New York in 1982 April, with 9.6 inches at Central Park and temperatures that fell into the 30s and 20s. Barry, I don't have a magic wand. If I did, I'd love to see that happen again, but it doesn't look like that is going to happen, at least in the foreseeable future.
Here's the issue when it comes to April snows in the coastal Northeast in the I-95 corridor. It's got to be perfect. You not only have to have the perfect upper air setup, it's actually got to go beyond perfect, because you have to have a perfect upper air and a very, very cold response in the lower levels of the atmosphere. You probably need some kind of air mass that has an Arctic origin to it. And the other thing is, Joe, if you're lacking slightly in that, then you have to rely on the timing factor. And if you're looking for accumulating snow, it better fall at night, because once it falls during the daytime, unless it's coming down at super heavy rates, you're going to have a real tough time accumulating it, even on the colder grassy surfaces. So you have too much working against you, and each day that passes makes it that much harder.
Exactly. And another a famous April snowstorm was the April Fool's snowstorm of 1997, where there really wasn't much in the immediate New York City area, but up here where I live, they had something like 14 inches of heavy, wet snow, and there were some places up in this area that were without power for many, many days. That was probably one of the latest really heavy-duty snowstorms that we have had in recent years. That was again in 1997, and we really haven't had anything like that in terms of significant or heavy snowfall up here or around the area ever since. So it's been a while, and you're right. everything has to fall into place, and your best chances of seeing anything would have to come in the overnight hours because, Joe, as much as I know that you hate to mention stuff like sun angle, but it really does
No, but
come into play
well,
now.
this time of year, it's relevant. You
Yes,
know, when they start talking sun angle at the end of January, that's a different story. But you know,
yeah,
we are into April. No, it is relevant now, obviously.
absolutely, absolutely.
And in the meantime,
So,
yeah, no. In the
no,
meantime,
I've
go ahead. I'm sorry because we have a little bit of a sound delay.
no, I'm just throw it back to you.
Okay.
Whatever you want to say in the
So
meantime.
just as you pointed out, Joe, with this developing block, and I've got the European upper air. This is for Thursday, and of course we have a low, an upper low that's forming north of Lake Ontario with a rather deep-looking trough in the eastern part of the United States. And if you take a look up right in here, we talked about this last week, developing high pressure just south of Iceland and southeast of Greenland just strengthens and builds into the Davis Strait. Now, this is the signature block. It also, by the it's also, by the way, if you look at the flow, this is a cold flow that's coming down from Alaska and northwestern Canada into the eastern part of the United States. So this ideally this is something like what we saw back in that 3-week stretch in February, if you remember. Now, of course, we see it here during the month of April. And this is also, by the way, what a negative East Pacific oscillation looks like. Okay. Higher pressures up in the Northeast Pacific, and that kind of forces the flow to come northwest to southeast from Western Canada into the eastern part of the United States. So you kind of have, you do have a colder look to things here later in the week. And as Joe mentioned, the upper low in the Northeast, right in here, is kind of trapped. We're now looking at Wednesday, April the 7th. The upper low is trapped somewhere in New England. You've got the big blocking high over the top, and you continue to have this rather chilly flow that comes down out of Canada. So laying any kind of storms aside for a moment, it does certainly suggest that if you're looking for 80-degree temperatures, you're not going to get that with this, okay? It's just not going to happen. This is an upper pattern that is going to favor below average temperatures through much of the time, starting later this coming week and going into the week that follows. And I'm going to switch over to the GFS to show you that upper low that Joe mentioned there, sitting off the New England coast. If I run it backwards, you'll actually see the retrogression here as soon as the maps finish loading. But starting from Wednesday, April 7th, and going backwards, watch the upper low. Okay, it actually turned. You see it coming in from the northeast, and this is typical in the springtime. It actually looks like it's moving in the right direction when you run it backwards because it's moving from west to east, in moving backwards in time. So this is what the block is doing here. The upper low tries to swing out. It really can't, and then you get a little arm that rotates southeastward, and then it just kind of just spins in there. And this is, Joe, this is also in the springtime. This is the kind of thing that you have to be really careful about. Forgetting any kind of frozen precip. I'm not really talking in those lines. But this is the kind of thing where if you lock up an upper low off the New England coast like that, or if it drops further south, you could wind up being in kind of a gloomy, doomy pattern for days and days and days.
We've known it to happen, especially at this time of the year. You would always hope that in these blocked patterns that we would be on that side of the block that has, the bright sunny weather. But when you have the upper low so close to you, you have to deal with sometimes long periods of, as you just mentioned, Joe, gloom and doom. And it's not necessarily a stormy pattern. It's just, one day after another day where there's more clouds than sun. You have that kind of a raw northeasterly wind. In a word, the weather in such a pattern like that is indifferent. It's just, blah.
Yeah,
and that's a typical spring pattern.
And then you could have days where there's lots of low clouds around, and if you're right along the immediate coast, you look at the satellite, and maybe the sunshine's broken out inland in western New Jersey and points west in Pennsylvania and upstate New York, and then you're just sitting with, with like as if somebody just splattered like a white paintbrush and just ran it up and down the immediate coast, and those clouds on some days don't ever get out of the way. But let's run through. I'm going to run through the GFS here in terms of the what it showed on its last run. Which, of course, if we were on if we were on standard time, we would already have about 7 or 8 days of the new GFS. But unfortunately, we aren't anymore, and therefore we have to look at the last model run. But here's your system for today. I'm using the radar view of the GFS here, and the trailing cold front, which is pretty sharp looking. And of course, you see the tight pressure gradient that develops overnight into Monday morning. Looks like, Joe, on this run, maybe the gradient overnight on the overnight model run was a little bit tighter than on some of the prior runs. So who knows? They might have to fill in that wind advisory area in between, that missing area from between, say, New York City down to the Maryland state line, where we don't have advisories up south and west. But here after that pulls out, the next high on Tuesday moves off the North Carolina coast. So that's going to allow things to warm up a little bit Tuesday into Wednesday. Here comes a cold front for Wednesday with some showers, and then there'll probably be a wave that develops on this front that deepens off the Maine coast or the Massachusetts coast east of Boston. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that we might see a changeover to some wet snow well north and west of the coastal plain, maybe up in the elevated areas in the Poconos and Catskills for a short time. Translates maybe a bit more up in northern New England as the low pulls away. Then the gradient tightens again late in the week. But now, of course, with this block, you'll notice if you look at the isobars out to the east, they don't pull out. So there's something hung up there east of Nova Scotia. And now, of course, you're getting this flow that's coming down from Canada. So on Easter Sunday morning, if the GFS is right, there's some weak weather system that drops down from the northwest. And then, of course, watching the maps to our east, you see that low rotating back west-southwestward. So this is not a pattern. It looks like at least for the first 10 days of April, Joe, we're going to be getting into, we're going to get into this blocking pattern. It's going to mean for what it usually means in this part of the spring. And as you said, that sort of indifferent type of weather. It can't get warm. The nights are chilly. The days are the days are somewhat raw at times, and you get frustrated because if you're going to sit that way, you might as well take temperatures up into the 70s, and it just can't happen.
No, it doesn't, and it looks like it will be, as you just mentioned. But the interesting thing is that the Climate Prediction Center, the guys and gals who do the probability forecasts for the first 10 days of April.
Do you need me to switch? You want to pull those maps up?
Yeah, we'll do that right now.
All right. Let me put that up on the screen. Okay, yes. So that's I took care of that. One more step, Mr. Rayo. Hang on, and you're good to go now.
Very good. And what I will do, hang on, I'm just getting all of this stuff here.
While you're doing that, let me just acknowledge the following folks that have hit Super Chat. And of course, here we go. Starting with Robert Russo and Brandon Doherty, and James T. hit earlier. Leon Probitsky hitting Super Chat, and Barry Goldberg hitting Super Chat, Joe. And he says, we are exemplary, top-notch meteorologists. So I guess that more than compensates for the clown comments from Manny, who I think by this time he's either gone away or the moderators have. I know they timed him out. I don't know if they banned him, but anyway, he's not there. But thank you, Barry. Most appreciated. Thank you. Go ahead, Joe. You've got the floor.
All right. So the interestingly, for all of the action that is taking place, the Climate Prediction Center for April 1st through the 5th, look at that. They not only have us in below normal precipitation, but they also have us in at least 50%, the darker shade of brown. So they apparently are under the impression, Joe, that for the first 5 days of April, we're not going to see much of anything in terms of, I mean, it may be a gloomy sky, but apparently not much in terms of precipitation. And even more interesting to me is the fact that when we look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, this is now for the 4th through the 10th of April, they continue to keep us. Well, actually, this is not precipitation. This is that was temperature. Here you go. For the 4th to the 10th of April, they continue to keep us in below normal precipitation. So if you want to believe the Climate Prediction Center, for the first 10 days of April, there's going to be a paucity, if I may use that $5 word, a lack of any precipitation of any significance, save maybe for the occasional shower here or there. Not much to speak of. And that's kind of surprising because, again, as we pointed out, somewhere around here near Nova Scotia, there's that upper low, and everything is kind of pivoting or swinging down from the north and northwest across the region. You would anticipate that there might be something, more significant in terms of precipitation, but they apparently think not of that particular pattern. And in terms of temperature, well, look at this. For the first half of April, April 2nd to April 6th on the 6 to 10 day prog, most of the eastern third of the country, as anticipated, is below normal. The real heat or warmth is out over the plain states, where they have, in some cases over the Dakotas and Nebraska, as much as an 80% chance of above normal temperatures. These folks out here may very well, during the first part of April, may be seeing temperatures well into the 70s and 80s, whereas here, we may very well be basking in temperatures only in the 40s. So the cool area for the first week or so of April will be here along the eastern seaboard, and the warm stuff is going to be out over the nation's midsection, over the plain states, where, again, the projection is for much warmer temperatures. Let me just quickly check the probabilistic pattern here. Well, this is interesting. For hazardous temperatures, they have a slight risk, and that includes your area, Joe. For April 3rd and 4th, they have a slight risk of excessively cool or chilly temperatures, which envelops not only your area, but much of the Tennessee River Valley, part of the Mississippi Valley, over to the mid-Atlantic coast to Cape Hatteras and Norfolk, Virginia. And as far as anything else, precipitation-wise, nothing for snow, anything for wind. Yeah, for wind, from the 4th to the 8th of April, windy conditions. So you know what? That area that I mentioned just a few moments ago that is going to be well above normal temperature-wise in the 70s and probably the 80s, Nebraska and the Dakotas, not only are they going to be above normal, but there's a slight chance of excessively high winds. So maybe a strong, windy, balmy, warm air mass setting up for the plain states as we move into the latter part of the first week of April. So looks like an interesting pattern coming up for April. Cool and dry here in the east, and warm and windy over the nation's midsection and into the plain states for again, the first week of April.
Bobby Livingsworth said this will be nice for early April spring trout fishing. Yeah, in fact, they actually, starting, for me anyway, starting tomorrow, the environmental conservation folks of the state of Georgia start stocking the local rivers with tons of trout. So, and the limit here, by the way, is 8 trout per day. So they put in a lot of trout in the rivers in this particular state. So if the weather does stay cool, Joe, I much prefer being out there in cooler than normal. But I'm also, where I am, 60s are pretty commonplace every day, and soon to be 70s and soon to be 80s, and then the humidity starts to go up. So the longer it stays cooler than normal here, the happier I am.
What about that stream that's just outside of your where you live?
Yeah, they get stocked. It gets stocked too. So all I have to do is walk 200 yards down the hill, and
with JJ.
With JJ. Oh, let me tell you a JJ story. Since we pretty much have the weather wrapped up, let me tell you JJ. Of course, so he came with me on this trip back to New York, and it's an 850-mile drive. So I stop every couple of hours. I always, whenever I stopped, I always, whenever I travel on the roads, I always stop every couple of hours because you need a break if it's a long trip. So I stop, I get gas, etc. So with JJ with me, when we stop, now the stops are a little bit longer. So, which actually is good. It makes the I came out of this long drive a bit physically a bit easier to recover from, as opposed to some of the other ones where I have a headache for 2 days and my body feels like it's still moving. So Joe, let me describe to you what happens when we stop at highway rest areas. Okay, so my dog has to he it's like he's in an amusement park and he's has to smell everything. So it takes forever for him to go to the bathroom. And just when you think that he's about to go to the bathroom, either a car, he hears a car going by and he has to see what it is, or another dog shows up in the dog walking area. Something would come along to distract him. And yesterday, I basically spent the whole day praying for him to do number two. And we were at the Tennessee rest stop on the Tennessee North Carolina state line on 26, and people heard me because there was a scream of glory, hallelujah when he finally let go. It just makes your trip easier knowing that your dog has done what he's supposed to do when you stop at these rest stops. But the thing that really struck me, I have never seen a dog do this. So we get home yesterday. Well, we're actually within about 5 miles of the house. He starts barking, and so he recognizes the area because he always goes with me. We go to the dog park, so we drive through these areas all the time, and he recognizes it. So he starts barking, which I expected. Now we get to near the house, and we come into the development where my cabin is, and he is really starting to bark out of control, and look his head, sticking out the window, and I'm thinking he's already knows that the squirrels are out there. This goes on, so we get to the driveway. I open the door. I have to leash him up. He literally wants to jump out of the car. Okay, which doesn't really do. You have to call him out the rest of the time. So he wants to jump out of the car. I have to stop him, so I leash him up. So we walk and we go into the house. Joe, we went into the house for 5 minutes. I'm not making this up. For 5 minutes. He ran around the room, jumping 3 and 4 feet in the air and barking that dog happy bark. And he jumped on me, and then he would jump off, and then he would run.
We're home.
I've never seen a dog react to being in his house the way this one did. It was wonderful to see. The only regret I have is that when I came out of the car, the first thing I didn't take was my phone. And I wish I had, because I would have loved to have. This lasted so long, I could have grabbed my phone with the video and videoed it. You would not have believed how happy he was. He was doing backflips practically. And I don't blame him, because I put him, it's a lot. I put him through 850-mile drive one way, and then 3 days later an 850-mile drive the other way. And, we stayed at 2 different houses. And, he was comfortable enough, and he got to do whatever he wanted because he's such a good dog. But I've just never seen a dog react to coming home to his house the way he did. And that made me feel good, because that tells me that my dog is very, very happy in my house.
Absolutely.
And that he also thinks it's his house. although he doesn't pay a mortgage.
Well, we used to take my Yorkie. We used to take him on trips, and when we got within 5 or 10 minutes of our house, I guess he just sensed the neighborhood. He got an idea that, hey, we're getting close to home, because then he would get very agitated and very, nervous, and he'd go back and forth in the car, everything. And yeah, just like your dog, he's very happy. He got back home, and after a few minutes, so unlike your dog, after a few minutes, he just like went to his special place or whatever like that, and just relaxed. He was set in his own ways or whatever, and like
Yeah,
things
yeah,
are back to normal now. Things are, but that's a good sign for you. I mean that means that your dog has already gotten used to your uh, southern abode and considers that to be home sweet
yeah.
home.
No, he's great. And Christina Pedia, you're right. He is a high energy dog because he's half Aussie Shepherd, and he needs to be run every day, and I do my best to do that. These last couple of days were a little tough, obviously, but he gets 5 mile walks every day, and since he gets 5 mile walks every day, I get 5 mile walks every day. So it's a good thing to have a dog like this, Joe, because they make you exercise. And I've always been one to work out most of especially in the summer months, and work out outdoors and all. But I'm also at a certain age right now where, given the choice of working out and not working out, I would probably prefer not to. So my dog makes me do what I'm supposed to do every day. And now, of course, he's just conked out because I think he still hasn't quite recovered. So he's asleep on the floor next to me, next to my desk here. So
You're like in the first movie Rocky, when Rocky used to walk or train with his dog Butkus, and then in Rocky Balboa, which I guess you could call Rocky Six, he got another dog, Punchy, and he used to run with Punchy. In fact, at one point in that particular movie, when they went all the way up to the top of the museum in Philadelphia, he actually grabbed Punchy and was like holding him up, and yay, we made it, we
yeah,
made it. So Sylvester Stallone used to train with his dogs, and you're training or running with your dog.
yeah. Bill Uber says he's relieved from where he was used to before. You got him. He doesn't want to go back in time. I totally agree with you. He's definitely very happy here. And Bobby Livingston, a lot of dogs like to stick their head out of the car window. That's one thing he does. He loves car rides. Every time when I take him out, we pass my truck. He wants to go in the truck and go for a truck ride. But I'm driving down 80. I'm driving down 81 and doing between 75 and 80 miles an hour, and he's got his head stuck out the window. He just loves it. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how he takes it, but he also I also have to make sure my windows my window controls are locked, because when he stands against the door and to stick his head out the window, his paw goes on the thing, and he brings the window all the way down. So it's one thing to have the window open enough
Right.
where he could stick his head out, but then I'm on 81,
Right.
and all of a sudden it's like you hear, and the whole window is open. Yeah, I don't want.
Right.
If he sees a squirrel out and
Right.
he's gone, he'll jump out the window.
He's gone.
He's gone.
He's gone. Yeah, absolutely. Same thing with my dog. Squirrels were, and I've been noticing something on Facebook. They have a bird feeder. I don't know if you've seen this, Joe, where there's like a thing at the bottom of the bird feeder where if the squirrel tries to get any food out of the bird feeder, he lands on the bottom of the bird feeder and then he starts spinning around. Have you seen this?
I've seen that. Yeah.
I mean, people are buying that probably not to feed the birds, but simply to watch
the squirrels.
the squirrels go round and round and round and round.
Yeah, well, listen, I've seen squirrels show up with screwdrivers and pliers and opening up bird feeders in order to get there, to get at what's in there. I don't mind particularly when squirrels get into my bird feeders. I was actually quite surprised because mine hang off the house on the second. There's 2 stories in the back because I'm on a hill. So the squirrels have to kind of shimmy up the deck, the supports of the deck to come up. So it's not easy for them to get there, but some of them do. And if JJ's out on the porch, he barks them and scares them away. I don't particularly mind when they get into my bird feeders and take some of the food there. That doesn't really bother me too much. It's when they kind of, I guess if it were a cartoon, the squirrel would literally take the bird feeder and just pour all the seeds out into, into some kind of sack and take the sack. It's when they do stuff like that where they knock it
Right.
down and the seed all over. There's
Right.
enough there for everybody, and it's enough there for everybody to share. I do notice, Joe, that my birds, the woodpeckers, depending on which type of woodpecker it is, they take their turns on the suet feeder. They line up, so they'll go one at a time. It's really odd.
Right.
They'll go one at a time, and as soon as one gets off, the next one goes on, and you'll see them you see them up on the trees. They just kind of park themselves up there and wait, which I thought was sort of strange.
Right.
So anyway, it's there's a lot of nature here where I am, so it's a lot of fun watching the antics of the daily animals
Of nature.
of nature. And speaking of nature, I think at this point it is calling, and it's time for. I think it might be time for us to say goodbye on this Sunday. So. Thanks everybody for being here today. Thank you, Robert Russo, Brandon Doherty, James T, Leon Probitsky, Barry Goldberg, all for hitting super chat on this Sunday of gloom and doom and thunderstorms and heavy rains and everything else. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. All the mulch and topsoil you need, folks. So get over there to get your yard in tip-top shape. 631-756-1125, the website omnitruevalue.com, and also wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. Give them a call if you're interested in making this a business for yourself, or you're thinking about maybe in 8 months when we're at, or even before that, maybe Halloween, you might want to have your house decorated. 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, 631-957-5106, and the website is liholidaylighting.com. So we don't have a Briller Jeopardy, by the way, Joe, because we were thinking maybe you do you were going to do your audio tapes, but I think let's push that for another day. Obviously, we're going to push that for another day. And we'll set that up, and you and I will be back tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Time.
Right. I totally forgot about that, but I do want to echo what Crystal Spears on the chat board noted earlier some time ago, and that is, let's pray for a great Passover week.
Yes.
Let's also pray for a great Easter week coming up. Happy Palm Sunday to all of you. Happy Passover, which began officially last night, and we're just a week away from Easter Sunday. But have we considered yet, are we going to do something on Easter Sunday, or are we going to pass on that?
Okay,
it's up
to you, because I have nothing planned. So if you want to do something on Easter Sunday, or what we could do next Sunday, is just wait for next Sunday evening and do it. As long as it doesn't interfere with the watching of the Ten Commandments. I think that's the Sunday they usually have that on.
Well, last year, for some weird reason, they had the Ten Commandments aired the night before Palm Sunday. I don't understand what the story was then, but next weekend it's either going to be the night before Easter, or some years it is Easter. That all depends upon the ABC television network and whatever the corporate people believe is best to air their special holiday shows. But it is a tradition here. At least before my son got married, we used to just sit in front of the TV for 4 hours and watch the Ten Commandments. But now he's married, and so he's in one place while I'm watching the other one.
Edward G. Robinson, exactly. How's your Messiah now? The frog, see? Were you the one that did?
No, the best part for me is that.
I was going to say, were you the one that said that to me originally?
Well, Billy Crystal used to say that he used to do his famous Edward G. Robinson imitation, and then he would say, where's your Messiah now?
And that's how he plays it, too. It's just like when he was the heavy in some of the movies in the early 30s, the gangsters in the early 30s. The front, right. 10 Commandments, Moses. What about Moses? I can take Moses on with one hand tied behind my back.
the highlight for me in that movie is early in the movie when Charlton Heston takes out Vincent Price.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
And was it Edward G. Roberts who said, something's wrong here, and whatever the role that Vincent Price played, he's a powerful man.
And then of course, you have the beautiful, beautiful Yvonne DiCarlo as Mrs. Moses.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's pretty obvious that
And you
she's
could almost and watching her in the Ten Commandments, I almost hear distantly in the background while she's sitting there. You almost hear in the background, Lily, Lily. You almost expect Fred Gwynn to start appearing.
there's
What are you doing here?
There's a bit of a wife nagging scene with Yvonne DiCarlo. She's like, "You're never home anymore, Moses. You're always running around in deserts with all those, with all your friends, and you're just, putting plagues on one after another. What's the matter?"
I'm being told by Mrs. Rayo it's either going to be what, Sunday morning or Saturday evening, because we'll be. Yeah, well, I'm going to be got to go back and forth to the Bronx. So yeah,
Right.
so there you go.
So you know what? Let's not do a show for Easter Sunday. Everybody will have some.
We've just
peace.
canceled Easter Sunday.
There'll be no show Easter Sunday. All right.
All right.
All right. So anyway, let's say goodbye now unless we want the show to last until next Easter Sunday, and we will see everybody tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Time. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Have a good one.
The frog, see?